Alrighty, everyone. Well, thank you for being with us. We hope everyone had a wonderful Valentine's Day celebration, and we will continue this morning with some ideas on love. February, we usually come around to kind of delving into what are our ideas of love and what are the implications of those ideas. What is the what is the effect of what we believe about love? How does that have an impact on our lives? So we started the month by giving a definition of love because love is a word that everybody has their own definition for. And the human definition of love is not necessarily the spiritual definition of love. The human definition of love is maybe that love is an attraction or love is an emotion. But we as human beings tend to use love or think of love the same way that we think of other things in this earth. It is something that you can get, it is something that you can give, it is something that you can barter for or exchange for. I'll give love in exchange for security, or I'll give love in exchange for wealth. we use love as means of getting what we want. And that's not the kind of love that we're talking about at all. That is a human concept of love. And what we want to do is we want to come to the divine concept of love. What is love? And the best that we could do in terms of defining it, because it is in fact ineffable beyond words, is the love that I'm talking about this month is the experience of oneness. It is the experience of unity. That which we love, that which we are in love with, that which we feel love with, is that which we feel one with, we feel kindred with. We love those things that we identify with and we accept our oneness with. And we may be cold or indifferent to those things that we don't feel one with, or we may even fear or hate or attack, if you will, those things that we don't feel one with. And the human concept, if you look at the human history, if you look at the way that human beings have interacted with each other for recorded history, we have always made the enemy, whoever the enemy happens to be, we have always made the enemy not like us. They are our enemy because they are not like us. They don't believe like we do. They don't think like we do. They don't have the same values that we do. And in the human concept of separation, because they are different than we are, because they think differently and believe differently and behave differently than we do, then it's okay for us to go to war. It's okay for us to attack them. It's okay for us to destroy their cities and take their goods, take their gold. And we have all of these different ways of thinking in the human concept that gives our way of thinking of separateness and apartness and differentness. It gives it a practical value. It gives humans permission, if you will, to behave in violent manner, to exercise greed in the name of goodness, and all of those things that we see as problems in human history that in fact would go away if we could all evolve to a greater understanding of love as the experience of oneness. We don't do those things to the people we love that we do to the people we don't love or the people that we hate. We simply don't do that. We find a different solution when there's a problem with someone we love. So we talked about the human concept of love and the divine concept of love, and the divine concept of love as being the experience of oneness, actually experiencing the unity. And we discussed that then that since God is all that there is and God has created everyone and everything out of itself, and it has no sense of otherness, it has no sense of separation, that it feels unity, it feels oneness with each and every one, with each and everything. It has no favorites, if you will. And then that helps us to understand that we've been told that God is love. He who knows not love knows not God. That's those sort of scriptures. That God is love. But if we don't understand that there's a difference between the human definition of love and the spiritual definition of love, to simply say that God is love makes no difference in our life. We have to understand that the love that God is the sense of unity, the sense of oneness, the sense of togetherness that is so strong that an idea to the contrary, an idea of separation, could not possibly enter our minds. In one of the Joseph Campbell series I was watching, he was discussing this unconditional love, and he said, we're told in Scripture that no greater love has one than to lay down his life for another. And Campbell says, because in that moment, in the moment, for example, of a soldier sacrificing himself to save his unit, in that moment there's no sense of self and other, there's no sense of separation. That the life of the others is just as important as the individual's life, and the individual freely gives up his or her own life out of this sense of oneness. The divine sense of oneness is much greater than we can possibly comprehend or understand. We still have, no matter how hard we try at the human level, we still have this sense of me and thee, or I and you. But the divine does not have that. It does not know that. It knows itself as each and every one, as each and everything. As you and I might know our hands or our feet as part of us, the divine simply knows that it is, and it is experiencing its life as all of its creation. So we have to keep that understanding, that spiritual understanding. We have to keep that intellectual definition, at least in our mind, as we are nurturing that experience in our life. We have to recognize that this thing that we call love is much different than the thing that we have been raised and told that love is. It is the experience of oneness. And then we talked about going into our relationships, that if true love is the experience of oneness, it is the experience of unity, then our relationships, if they are to be based on love, our relationships must be based on the common ground, on the alikeness more than the difference, on the sameness, if you will, on the togetherness rather than the separateness. That even though we come into relationships with many people in the course of our lifetime for many different reasons, some transactional, we simply exchange money and goods and services, and some romantic, that every relationship, the foundation of every relationship must be love, must be this sense of oneness, must be this sense of sameness, must be this realization that you and I are simply two waves of the same ocean. And then of course it leads us into a deeper understanding of why we are told to pray for our enemies, to bless those who would curse us and do us harm, To see, to bless is to see the presence of God within, to see the presence of God within even those who would do us harm, to recognize our oneness even with those who hate us and despise us, even those whom we fear. That the spiritual challenge, if you will, is not simply to react in the human context, which we tend to react in, which is, you're not like us, you don't like us, we don't like you, we're gonna go to war and duke it out. But the spiritual concept is, I will find that sense of oneness within me. Whether you find it within you or not is immaterial, but I will find it within me. And I will cultivate it within me. And I refuse to hate. I refuse to hate anyone. You remember Viktor Frankl's words in Man's Search for Meaning, some of the most profound words I think I have ever read. The man was in Auschwitz and he refused to hate. They killed his family and he refused to hate. He said the one thing they could not take away from him was his choice not to hate. Our spiritual approach to life then is, no matter what the situation, no matter what the circumstances, we remain grounded in the truth of God's love. So we're starting to see then, as we progress through the month of ideas together, what we're trying to see is that the spiritual idea of unity, that is the love that we're talking about, brings us into a different understanding and therefore a different experience in our relationships, a different experience in peace, a different experience in our life. Everything about us begins to change as we start to develop a different understanding and then a different experience of love. And today what we're going to do is expand on that a little bit. We're going to talk about love will provide. And then next week we're going to close the month by talking about love as spiritual practice, the yoga of love. But we want to come to an understanding today, a realization hopefully, that leads to the experience of the fact that whatever it is that we require in life, that love, the unity of all life, that love, the experience of the unity of all life, is truly what is providing it, what does provide it, what has always provided it, is what always will provide it. And I would hope that this is accompanied by a desire to go directly to love. In other words, instead of trying to figure out how to do things on our own, how to make things happen on our own, can love be our starting place? Can we start with the recognition of unity? Can we start with the recognition of God's love? And then allow whatever it is that we require in our life at that time, whether whether it be food, whether it be housing, whether it be money, whether it be companions, whether it be helpmates, whether it be ideas, whatever it may be, can we recognize that God's love is the source, and then allow what we are accepting into our life to come to us from that source in whatever way or ways may be in the highest good of all. In other words, as Emerson might say, can we get our bloated nothingness out of the way? Can we just step back and let God be God instead of trying to tell God how to be God? Direct God. I love in reading Joel Goldsmith, he says, you tell God I need $100 and God says, you're telling me I know everything. You're telling me. What are you telling me for? Can we let God be God? Can we let God give us the abundance and the bounty unconditionally, as it's trying to, and it must do, and it will do, according to our belief, according to our acceptance. So this is where the human intellect and the human ego kind of really can visibly be seen in the way of our growth. We can see it when I talk about war and when I talk about struggle and hatred and those things. We can see very clearly that those are nothing but ideas. Those are human ideas that come into play and then outpicture themselves on the battlefield, if you will. You have two sides going against each other, each convinced that they are right and the other is wrong, and those are nothing but ideas. And if we could get back beyond the ideas, to that which is beyond ideas, but from which ideas come, if we could get back there to that level of cause, then perhaps we could be most effective in dissolving the problem, the false ideas. And the same thing comes into play when we get into this realm of, quote, making a living, unquote. You know, you hear people say, well, you got to live until you die. You got to live until you die. And what they're saying is you got to do whatever you got to do in order to get by. And then, but when you die, see, then you're going to go to heaven and the streets are going to be paved with gold. And we're all going to be happy forever after. And that's an idea of separation. That's an idea that the human experience is somehow not part of the divine experience. That the rules, if you will, are different when you leave this body than they are when you're in this body. And that's only a belief. It's only a set of ideas that human beings have created. We created the rules and then we try to play the game according to the rules. And we say, well, this must be the way it is because this is the way it appears to be. So let's go back in time, if you will. Let's go back in mythology, if you will, to the Garden of Eden, which is the metaphor, which is the teaching story that tells us that there's part of us that knows of our connection to the divine, and it knows of the divine's willingness to provide to us and through us and as us everything that is required. The air that we breathe, the most precious thing that we have, the air that we breathe, is a gift from the trees and the plants, and it comes to us and our breath goes back to them in an exchange. Now, how could there be an exchange between the human body and the body of the plants if there were not some common ground? If we were not two parts of the same thing, if there wasn't some commonality, some unity between us. The experience of oneness is right there in every breath that we take, if we will but stop to recognize it. This is why meditating on our breath can be such a profound experience. We do it every minute of every day, and we never think about it. That we could not even take a breath if we were not one with all of nature. And here in the symbolism of the Garden of Eden, we kind of get a picture of that unity, of that oneness. We kind of get that picture that everything that is required is there. The cool water to drink, the food to eat, the fruit and the vegetables to eat. The animals are there, and they're, of course, all friendly. You know, doesn't seem to be any apparent hostility between human beings and animals in this story. And what we're told is that Adam, and of course Adam is representative of all of us. It's representative of the human being. Adam meant clay man or man of the earth, right? Those of us who wear these costumes that are made out of the dust of the earth, we are all Adam. And Adam walked with God, hand in hand in the cool of the evening. The presence of God was there, see. It was there. It was experienced. It was known. And whatever Adam wanted, whatever Adam needed, companionship, food, everything, it was already provided. It was already there. There was nothing that Adam had to do. I want you to keep this in mind. There was no question of worthiness, of goodness. There was no sense of struggle. There was no having to get into God's good graces. It already was. God created us. The natural state that we were created in is a sense of acceptance, a sense of not questioning, a sense of asking for and receiving our good. You can see this when a child comes into the world. When I was training to be a paramedic, we were taught if you had to deliver a baby away from the hospital, that the first thing that you would do as the baby came and you got it breathing and made sure it was breathing okay and cleaned up a little bit, would be to hand it to its mother to nurse. Because in that very act of nursing, not only was the baby starting to get the nutrition and the antibodies and all of the good things that were contained in the mother's milk that it needed, but there was something in that very act of nursing the child that helped the mother's body to pass the placenta. Here's a child only a few minutes old and it already knows how to suckle. It came into the world knowing how to do that. It came into the world, its little lungs ready to expand and accept the air that God had already given. Its little mouth ready to suckle, ready to accept the nurturing milk that God had provided through the body of its mother. And its mother, in giving of the milk, was also receiving what her body needed, was receiving whatever was appropriate to help to complete that process of childbirth. And right there, if we just stop and look at that, where is the ego in that? Where is the intellect in that? Where is all of the human stuff and all of that? And it's not there, you see. It takes place at a level that is instinctual. It takes place at a level that the intellect shouldn't be able to interfere with. Now, of course, we do. We find all ways to make childbirth hard, but the way that God gave it to us, the nature, it is a very symbol of our acceptance. If we can just surrender and get into the flow of life, if we can just let God's life be in us as it was intended to be. How could we drink the water and have it be of benefit to our bodies if we were not made of the same stuff and substance? We're told that our bodies are like 98% water or something like that. So the air that we breathe and the water that we drink and the food that we eat is nothing more than the dust of the earth taking the form of food. And it is providing for itself as us. Love provides. The sense of unity provides. The sense of oneness provides. The divine cannot withhold from itself. It's impossible to think that God would say to itself, well, I'm going to support myself as this, but I'm not going to support myself as that. Scripture tells us that the rain falls on the just and the unjust alike. Now remember, That particular quote came from the desert where rain was very, very important. So the divine does not judge. It does not withhold. It cannot say to one, I will give you health, but to another, I will give you disease. I will give you enough and plenty, and you over here, you are going to have to scrape pretty hard in order to just get corn to grow in the desert. It is not love that does that. For love cannot do that. But it is the intellect. It is the ego. It is the humanness of us that does it. So what we're told in the story of the Garden of Eden is Adam and Eve were living in the experience of the presence of God. My definition of love. They were living in the experience of the presence of God. And everything that they required was provided for them. Enough and plenty. And then something happened. And that something that happened within their intellects. They began to believe in separation. They ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, not the truth of good and evil, but the knowledge of good and evil. Instead of believing only in God and in God's love, they started to believe that perhaps there was something else. Perhaps there was something other. And it was then that they had to have the experience of struggle that went along with their belief. If they wanted to believe that there was another way to do things, then they had to be given the opportunity to experience another way of doing things. They got to bear their children in labor, to eat their bread by the sweat of their brow, that they had to scratch the earth in order to struggle and to grow and to make a living. And all of these other things that we were taught came about when they let go of the idea of oneness and they accepted in its place the idea of separation. They got to experience the separation by being cast out of the garden. They got to experience the separation by going forth into the world and having the perfect outpicturing of their beliefs. A different experience. An experience of lack, an experience of limitation, an experience of struggle, an experience of war, an experience of fear. But we have to keep in mind that that was only an idea, the idea that there might be duality, that there might be separation, that there might be another way, is only an idea. It is only a mental construct. It is only a belief that human beings hold. And it's done unto us according to our belief. So in this sense of struggle, in this sense of otherness, in this sense of separation, we, the human race, have come to believe that we have to provide ourselves. That we have to make it happen, that we have to struggle, that we have to scrape, that we have to fight to get a bigger piece of the pie. Because if we don't do it, somebody else is going to get all the pie and then we're going to have none. And these are the rules that the human race has constructed. These are the ideas that we have believed in. And of course, this is the experience that we have created for ourselves. We have lost sight of the fact that everything about us is an expression of God's love. The miracle of a child's body growing in its mother's womb, the miracle of cells dividing and some becoming eyes and some becoming bones, and some becoming lungs, some becoming muscles. We have lost sight of just how miraculous that is. We have lost sight of our unity and our connection to the air we breathe and the water we drink, and look how we are treating it as human race. Look at what we are doing to our planet because we think we are different from it and separate from it, and it is there for us simply to use. The same with the animals. We have lost that. We have lost that sense that the imagery of the story of the Garden of Eden represents to us. And we are stuck in the delusion, as I said last week, we're stuck in this delusion that our human way is the right way and the only way and the best way. And we persist in it. So what we want to do as we move along, as we continue to grow spiritually, is we want to be able to move back into cause. We want to get out of the world of effects and we want to move back into cause, and we want to understand that the intelligence that knows how to communicate as air between us and the plants in a manner that is for the highest good of all concerned, that intelligence that created this entire universe out of nothing, out of its own intent, out of its own energy, that the intelligence that knows how to take the nothingness and turn it into form, and then have that form take particular shape, take particular activity, to become planets, to become stars, to become water, to become air, to become the food that we eat. That the intelligence that knows how to do that has not gone away. It is right here. I want you to think for just a moment about grass, about the grass that we have to go out and mow in the midst of the summer when it's 100 degrees out there and it's 80% humidity and the grass is growing wild, and we have to get out there and we have to cut it. And we don't appreciate what a miracle it really is. For without this simple plant, without grass, and without the different forms that it has evolved to take in the history of the earth, human life as we know it would cease to exist. In its simplest form, grass is grass, feeds the cattle, feeds the sheep, feeds the animals, and it produces the milk, produces the fur, produces the meat that we need to eat from the grass. But then it has evolved and it has taken different forms. It has evolved and it has become rice in the very damp parts of the world, and it has grown there to be a staple of food that supports billions of people. Simple grass became rice. It has evolved and it has become the grains of wheat that we know. And again, it feeds billions of people in different products that are made from wheat. And it has evolved and it has become corn as we know it. And once again, it serves as feed for not only people but animals. And I want you to think of all of human life and how it is dependent upon this simple plant of grass. And yet there was an intelligence, and there is an intelligence that is operating through all of life, that knows exactly what to do and when to do it and how to do it. It knows how to become rice in one climate and wheat in another and corn in another, and to remain as grass in yet another. And it knows how to sustain itself as humans, as animals, as sheep, as cattle. It knows how to do all of that without us having to tell it how to do it, without us having to compel it to do it, without us having to make it do it. See, love provides that experience of unity, that experience of oneness, because we all come from the same cause. Love provides. And what we're being invited to do as we grow spiritually is to stop and think about whatever it is that we want in our lives, that we need in our lives. It may be health. It may be comfort from pain. It may be wealth. We may need or want money to do the things that we want to do in life, to pay our bills, to build our business, to found our charity, to do whatever good thing it is that we wish to do in life. It may be in the form of companions, of romantic relationships, of professional relationships, of helpmates, of people who will come into our life to cooperate with us and us with them so that we can do something bigger. It may be all of these things. And what we are invited to do is to try to let go of the human engineering, the human trying to figure it out. Well, I need this, and in order to do this, I need to do that, and in order to do that, I need to do the other thing. And what we want to do is we want to go right back to cause. And we want to understand that this very thing that we desire is to experience the unity of life in that particular way. Can I experience the presence of God in my life as my significant other? Can I experience the activity of God in my life as the air that I breathe, as the food that I eat, as the water that I drink, as the money that I spend, as the house that I live in, as the country in which I am a citizen? Can I recognize and can I experience all of life as the starting place is being the presence and the oneness of God? In order to do this, we have to come back and we have to recognize that God is omnipresence. God is omniscience. God is omnipotence. And it has ways and means that we know not of. So we are so used to seeing things occur in a manner that we understand, in a manner that we have engineered, that we expect that may be the only way that it can occur. If we require money to buy something, we understand that, well, if we go get a job, then we get money in exchange for the job, and then we get money to buy something. That is the normal, the natural, the human way, if you will, of doing things. But that is not the only way by which things come to us. And if we can go back and we can start to experience the presence, the omnipresence of God in our lives, if we can allow ourselves to open up to God's activity and to remove our expectations of how it needs to happen, what we can in fact experience is that it happens in ways that are much better than whatever we thought. Yes, we may get a job, and we may get a job that's very fulfilling, and we may receive income from that job. We may receive a check in the mail. We may receive a gift of whatever it is that we were anticipating. It may simply appear in our lives by ways that we don't understand at all, arrive in our mailbox, arrive on our doorstep. But however it got there, however it arrives, we must understand that it only came because it is an expression of love. It is an expression of the unity. It is an expression of the oneness. So whatever it is that we desire in our life, can we go back and start by recognizing that it already exists within God? This is the first step of treatment. The first step of affirmative prayer. Can I recognize that this very thing that I desire to experience is already some part of God? Is it peace that we desire? And we must recognize that God is already peace. God has never been unpeaceful. No matter what you read, no matter what people tell you about God having enemies and striking down people, it didn't happen. People got angry and struck one another down and said God told them to do it. but God has never been angry. So the peace that we desire already exists. And now what we must do is we must bring ourselves into realizing that that includes us. We must experience that unity. We must accept that unity. We must open ourselves up and be willing to let go of all of our egotistical and intellectual ideas about how that peace must come. And we must allow it to come forward from within us and fulfill itself through us. We may act differently, we may do things differently, we may behave differently. But the difference is that the change in our actions is driven from a change within. And we are not trying to create a change within by initiating the change from without. See, many times in our human experience we think if we behave differently, everything will change. And the only thing that changes is things are different while we behave differently. But when we get distracted or we get tired or we get onto something else, our behavior goes right back the way it was and the situation goes right back the way it was. So what we want to understand is that love, the very experience of the presence of God, that the mythology that was given to us in the story of the Garden of Eden was not something that happened a long, long time ago in a far, far away place, but it is something that is happening right here and right now, this very instant. On a Skype class we were discussing the chapters on immortality, and one of the statements in there is you don't need to prepare to meet God, you're meeting God every minute of every day. We don't need to prepare to get back into the garden, but the garden is here every minute of every day. The presence of God is here every minute of every day. It cannot withhold from us any more than it could withhold from itself. And it being all intelligence, it knowing how to take an idea and turn it into a universe, knows how to provide in your life whatever it is that you need without you having to figure out how to do it. But you must be open and you must be receptive and you must believe. So in this place that we want to be today, in this place that we want to come to in our experience, we come to it through the intellect, but we need to bring it down into our experience, is that God already is. And God already is and has everything that we will ever need. All of the love, the experience of love that we need, it is already contained in the divine. All of the resources that we need are already contained in the divine. The intelligence to produce perfect health within our bodies, already contained within the divine. The perfect peace, the perfect sense of security, the perfect sense of belonging, and the perfect sense of being, already here in the divine. All of the materials, the food, the water, the supplies, the money, the helpmate, already contained within the divine. And that's how love will provide. Our growth then is to eliminate, to dissolve every and any idea within consciousness that tells us that there's another way besides love. We have to stop eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We must choose to eat by giving our attention only to the knowledge of good. All of the ideas that tell us about the differences are wrong. They are ideas of separation. And God has never been separated from itself. As we do this, as we open ourselves up for the only thing that matters, the experience of the presence of God, we experience love providing directly for us. whatever we need, whenever we need it, in the most appropriate way. So what we can see then as we go through this is that our real spiritual practice, our real spiritual growth, our real religion, if you choose to call it religion, is love. Growing deeper and deeper every day into the experience and the activity of the presence of God in us, as us, and through us. So next week when we come together, we're going to talk about love as our spiritual practice, love, the yoga of love, as the most direct way back into the garden. Love has always provided. Love must always provide because it cannot withhold of itself. Love has created you and I as its instruments of self-givingness. And it can and must provide for itself as us to the degree that we believe it will, to the degree that we can accept it. So let our prayer today, let our attention today and through the week be in realizing the activity of God's love in our life, giving to us and through us everything that is appropriate by means that we don't even need to understand. And so it is.